This is just a short video describing the restoration of a vintage tube radio, a Rogers-Majestic model R151, dating from around 1951. This is a 5-tube All-American 5 type radio made in Canada by the Rogers-Majestic company. As a basic entry-level AM radio, it only has two controls, tuning and volume on-off. There are no extras like a tone control, phono input, or shortwave bands. The case is made of bakelite. By this time, radio manufacturers had basic radio designs like this down to a science. It uses 5 miniature tubes with a minimal number of components. Radios like this were offered through the 1950s and 60s. With a significant labor cost to assemble it in Canada, the next cost-saving change that came along was to switch to printed circuit boards and eventually solid-state or transistors in the 1960s. It was made in either Toronto or Montreal, Canada by the Rogers-Majestic company. Rogers was one of the first companies to offer AC line-operated radios using tubes they designed. During the time that the radio was sold, they had merged with the Majestic company and were known as Rogers-Majestic. Rogers still exists today as Rogers Communications, one of the largest cell phone, television, and internet providers in Canada. I found a 1952 catalog that listed the R151 at $24.95 Canadian. It was offered in 4 colors: walnut, ivory, maroon, and green. This would be the walnut version, which has the natural bakelite color. The others would have been painted. Note that radios of this type are often repainted to make them more attractive to sell on sources like eBay. I found the service information for the radio in the Radio College of Canada or RCC manuals for 1949-1950. The circuit is the same as the models R120, R130, and R140, which I think they just varied in case style or color of case. I picked this radio up at an auction where it was sitting on a table of additional items that were being offered at $1 each. I picked it up thinking it would be useful if only for the parts. There were some pieces missing from the bakelite case and it was quite dirty, but it was complete, so I decided to restore it to working order. Looking inside, it had minimal work done on it in the past. A couple of tubular capacitors didn't look original, and the tuning dial had cracked at the back and been repaired. I carefully powered it up using a variac, and all the tubes lit up, but there was a loud hum from the speaker indicating that the electrolytic capacitors had failed, but it sounded like some stations were being picked up, which was a good sign. The power plug had disintegrated and was not making a good connection. I'd normally replace the entire line cord, but for now I just replaced the plug. I replaced the 2 electrolytic capacitors, originally in 1 can, with new units. I also replaced all 7 wax paper capacitors, which were quite old and sticky. I measured the values of the 10 or so resistors, and as expected, all had drifted higher in value but were acceptable with the exception of a 33 ohm resistor, which measured about 68 ohms. This was a 2-watt resistor in the power supply that tends to get quite hot. It was replaced with a new one.
During Nissan's Born to Thrill event, lease the 2023 Rogue from $99 weekly for only 24 months.
Powering it up, it now received AM stations quite clearly using the internal loop antenna. It's a little tricky to tune as there's no vernier, so the tuning dial only has a half turn of total movement for the entire AM band. I touched up the alignment using the instructions in the servicing data, but it didn't really need it. As is common with Canadian radios of the era, there's a notice about requiring a radio receiving license and the penalties for not doing so. Similar to in the UK, there were annual license fees, typically $2.50 for radios in Canada, until the requirement was abolished in 1953. I cleaned up the case and touched up the gold paint for the dial frequencies and maker name. There's still some cracks and a hole in the case, but they're not too obvious. With enough effort, these could be filled with epoxy and painted to match, but it's not really worth the effort. It probably fell off a table or shelf at some point. Bakelite's quite brittle. Since I already had all the capacitors and resistors on hand, my total investment for the radio was just the $1 I paid for it, so it was quite a good deal. This is a nice little radio, typical of its time, and works well for what it was designed to do. As I write this, my cell phone, television service, and internet connection are being provided by the same Rogers company that built this radio over 70 years ago, and one of the 3 AM radio stations here in Ottawa, Canada that it can pick up is owned by Rogers.